Those among us who think deeply have come across the question of existence many times in our lives. Questions like, what is my life's purpose? How can I be happy in this vast, yet seemingly meaningless world? These existential doubts have shadowed humanity for centuries. We know we are free to choose whatever path we want, but this freedom of choice is often what terrifies us the most. Especially for those who are non-religious, the responsibility of creating our own meaning can feel overwhelming. As Kierkegaard put it, life's freedom can induce dizziness, because we realize we truly are the ones choosing our fate. And in this chaotic world, where there are countless religions, clashing cultures, and so much deception and hypocrisy, many thinkers find themselves lost, unable to decide where to look for peace or happiness. This is where people often fall into nihilism, a dark philosophy that offers no comfort to someone searching for meaning or peace. But Albert Camus presented a more human answer, a philosophy that embraces the meaninglessness, but still finds a reason to live with joy and rebellion. That idea is called absurdism, and this video is here to explore those complex questions around absurdism. But first, we need to understand nihilism, especially its rise in modern thought, because without it, you can't truly grasp what absurdism is responding to. So let's get into it. In the 19th century, Europe underwent massive revolutions, social, political, and intellectual, that shattered the old foundations of belief. The Enlightenment had emphasized reason and science, and with it came a growing skepticism toward monarchy, tradition, and especially religion. As faith in the church and divine order weakened, a philosophical void began to emerge. From this void, nihilism was born, the belief that life has no inherent meaning, value, or purpose. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this crisis coming. In The Will to Power, he described the unfolding future as one moving toward a catastrophe. His famous declaration, "God is dead. We have killed him," wasn't a celebration, but a cry of alarm. Without a divine anchor, humanity would struggle to find meaning in an indifferent universe. And before Nietzsche, on the Russian front, Fyodor Dostoevsky was echoing similar fears. In Notes from Underground, he satirized the so-called rational egoists, individuals who championed selfishness and free will without any moral foundation. His bitter narrator mocks this shallow freedom, declaring he could let the world go to hell if it meant securing his own comfort. For Dostoevsky, this was the heart of nihilism, an empty soul, stripped of responsibility and detached from truth. He warned that without spiritual grounding, society would devolve into extreme self-preservation, individualism, and an obsession with the ego, placing the I against everyone and everything else. In his later novel Demons, he took this to its terrifying conclusion. He imagined a generation of radical revolutionaries who believed they could build a perfect world without God. But in their pursuit of utopia, they justified murder and destruction, showing how moral nihilism, once unchained, could turn deadly. By the early 20th century, Dostoevsky's dark vision had come true. The modern ideologies, with its promise of a godless utopia, ended up justifying violence in the name of progress. Totalitarian regimes, both left and right, rose by offering salvation, but delivered only terror. As one commentator observed, these systems didn't just remove God, they replaced him with ideology, and in doing so opened the gates to widespread bloodshed. As Hegel once lamented, "We learn from history that we do not learn from history." And yet, nihilism didn't disappear. In many ways, it evolved. In today's world, it often hides behind the language of progress and modernity, while quietly hollowing out meaning. Dostoevsky and Nietzsche's warning still echoes. A society without moral grounding may celebrate freedom on the surface, but beneath it, something darker stirs. It's in this existential crisis that Albert Camus enters the scene. Camus understood the despair of the modern individual, alone, disenchanted, and searching for meaning in a universe that offers none. But unlike the nihilists who gave in to despair, He looked for another path. He famously said, "I do not believe in God, and I am not an atheist." In that paradox, Camus rejected both blind belief and absolute denial. He absorbed the warnings of Nietzsche and Dostoevsky, but rather than surrender to nihilism, he created a new way of thinking, absurdism, a way to live with meaninglessness, without lying to ourselves and without losing our joy. And this is what I'm going to discuss in detail now. At this point of his effort, Camus writes, man stands face to face with the irrational. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. In his 1942 essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus explains that the absurd is born at the moment we recognize a fundamental clash. On one side, there's our deep longing for meaning, for happiness, for clarity. On the other, an unresponsive universe that offers none of it. In simpler terms, we want purpose, and the universe says nothing back. The absurd doesn't come from the world alone, or from us alone. It exists in the gap between our expectations and the cold reality we face. Nothing mystical is needed. The absurd is simply this raw disconnection between what we hope for and what we actually find. To illustrate this, Camus gives us the myth of Sisyphus, a man condemned by the gods to roll a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down again and again for all eternity. It's a striking image of futility, and for Camus, it perfectly captures the absurd human condition: endless effort, no final reward. The repetition is familiar. Think about the daily 9-to-5 grind, where each day bleeds into the next. Camus saw Sisyphus's task as a reflection of modern life. But here's where Camus surprises us. His answer isn't despair. It's lucid rebellion. He urges us to imagine Sisyphus not as broken, but as defiant. One must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because Sisyphus understands his fate. He no longer searches for meaning beyond the rock. Instead, in embracing the struggle itself, he creates his own meaning. The absurd cannot be overcome, but it can be lived with, honestly and courageously. Even hopeless labor can become meaningful if we face it without illusions. This approach encourages us to discard the constant search for answers, reject rigid belief systems, and instead live with a few honest questions at heart. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Why worry about it? Why not? So what? Break free from fear. Try what you've always put off. So what if you fail? Start that side project. Leave that job. Explore what excites you, not what impresses others. This is how absurdism turns resignation into resilience, by giving you permission to act without always needing justification. In his novel, The Stranger, we meet Meursault, a man emotionally detached from the world living in Algiers. Meursault lives by the senses, the heat of the sun, the taste of wine, the feeling of swimming in the sea. He doesn't chase meaning, nor does he pretend to find any. After he kills a man, almost by chance, Meursault feels no remorse. It's one of the darker possibilities of absurdism, which I'll explore more deeply in the final chapter of this video. But it's important to note, when offered religious comfort before his execution, he refuses it. He isn't interested in God or salvation. Camus clarified that Meursault wasn't even a traditional atheist. He simply didn't care. He didn't deny the silence of the universe. He accepted it. In the final moments of The Stranger, Meursault finds a strange peace. He hopes for a crowd at his execution and welcomes the gentle indifference of the world. In that clarity, he experiences what Camus called a pure and basic delight. Meursault becomes an image of the absurd man, lucid, awake, and strangely content. This is what Camus offers us. Not escape, not false hope, but something even braver, a way of living that embraces freedom, rejects illusion, and creates meaning through action. So, let's accept the absurdity of life and choose to live fully. If you have freedom, health, and life itself, what more could you ask for? After all, even Sisyphus, with his endless burden, found joy in the journey. We are luckier still. We have the power to explore, change, and try again. Instead of settling for nihilism, absurdism gives us something far more human. There were two more ways that Camus found when he was trying to search for meaning in life, which he rejected, which I am going to discuss now. The first, philosophical suicide, happens when someone, overwhelmed by the absurd, clings to a comforting belief, whether it's religion, mysticism, or abstract ideology, in order to restore a sense of meaning. Camus believed this was intellectually dishonest. In the myth of Sisyphus, he argues that leaping into such belief systems is not an act of courage, but of intellectual cowardice. He writes that we mask the absurd by denying one of the terms of its equation. In other words, we suppress either our longing for clarity or the world's silence, refusing to face the contradiction directly. He puts it plainly: I am not interested in philosophical suicide, but rather in plain suicide. What he means is that he refuses to escape through belief systems that offer hope without evidence. Whether it's Kierkegaard's leap of faith or Husserl's idealism, Camus sees these not as solutions, but as elegant deceptions, comforting lies that prevent us from confronting reality head-on. The second escape is even more direct: physical suicide. If life has no meaning, then why not end it? Camus doesn't avoid this brutal question. In fact, he declares it the most serious philosophical problem of all. But his answer is clear: suicide is not a solution. It's a surrender. He argues that accepting the absurd isn't about giving up. It's about fully committing to life despite its lack of ultimate meaning. Suicide, like false hope, is just another escape route. But instead of hiding behind illusions, suicide rejects life altogether. It refuses the challenge, so please do not do it. Camus likens the absurd person to someone condemned to death who chooses to resist with every breath. This is the heart of revolt: to live consciously, to struggle without guarantee, and to embrace beauty where it can be found. He writes that in the face of the absurd, we must live for the instant, for the beauty, and the implacable grandeur of existence. Now, that's a beautiful and empowering way to look at absurdism, but let's be honest, that's not the whole picture. There's a darker side to it too, and we need to face that reality next. To truly understand absurdism, we must also explore what happens when it is misunderstood, ignored, or twisted. In The Stranger, Camus' own novel, we meet Meursault. One day, under the blinding Algerian sun, he shoots a man. Later, he expresses no remorse. He says he doesn't feel pity or hope, only that he'd been waiting, detached, for something undefined. This attitude, so what, reveals a dangerous kind of nihilism. Meursault becomes a man who no longer believes anything matters, and so he no longer sees why his actions should. Dostoevsky, long before Camus, issued similar warnings in fiction. In The Idiot, the character Arkady Svidrigailov lives without any faith in a moral or spiritual order. He famously tells himself, "After death, nothing remains." Free from any belief in accountability or meaning, he manipulates others, attempts violence, and ultimately takes his own life. He's not a cartoon villain. He's frightening because he reflects what happens when all hope of redemption is lost. But it's not just fiction. History provides even more harrowing examples. The 20th century was soaked in blood. Massacres, genocides, purges, all under ideologies that denied the inherent value of human life and embraced the philosophy of so what? Who cares? Nietzsche and Dostoevsky, both of whom foresaw the consequences of moral collapse, were tragically vindicated. He watched as political systems promised liberation but delivered oppression, all in the name of a greater cause. As one scholar noted, ideological salvation often meant justifying murder in the name of an abstract ideal. Even today, the pattern continues. Atrocities are often hidden beneath modern rhetoric: reform, efficiency, progress, while people suffer in silence. Camus' absurdism does not excuse these horrors. It confronts them. He argued that the failure to revolt ethically against absurdity is what allows destruction to spread. When people feel that nothing matters, they may be freed from religious guilt, but also from moral accountability. And without anything to believe in, they believe in nothing. And this void is easily filled by violence, power, or despair. In The Rebel, Camus insists that revolt must be paired with compassion, that absurdity must lead not to chaos, but to solidarity. True revolt for Camus is never just about survival, it's about standing for human dignity in the face of meaninglessness. Whether in fiction or history, the lesson is the same. A life stripped of care or value creates monsters.